Ladies and, well, ladies. We're talking business. Ladies' business. No, not that ladies' business. Ladies in business. Especially tradie business. Whether you're a CEO, self-employed, working for someone or supporting someone else in theirs, this is a podcast about ladies in tradie businesses. Join your host, Nick Cox, one half of Tradies in Business and the Tradiepreneur program, as she interviews inspirational, everyday, motivational and extraordinary women from all industries and walks of life about what it takes to be a truly successful, modern lady in business.
I've got an interesting question for you today, listeners, and that it's a rhetorical one. You can't reply to me, obviously, because this is a podcast, so it's coming into your ears, but I'd love you to leave me a comment, of course. Today's guest, what we want to know is, what does breeding and supplying crickets, cockroaches, spiders, scorpions, leaf insects, maggots, mealworms, and snails have to do with today's guest? It's a great question. It threw me for six when I read it. I was absolutely blown away. I am joined today by Nicky Turner, who is the owner and director of Laguna Pest Control and Peregian Pest Control. More than that, though, she's the CEO and president of the Professional Women in Australian Pest Management. Thank you, Nicky, for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. How are you going?
Really well, thank you. That is such a mouthful. Do you ever have to introduce yourself and roll through all of that?
I shorten it to PWAPM, but that's a bit of a tongue twister on itself. So
clearly practice, because you nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. I was impressed that you actually were able to say it on the first go. So you did well.
Nicky, I'd love to hear how you came to be doing all of what you do. It's a huge amount. You've got 3 kids as well. I'd love to get a bit, if you can give us a bit of a background on how you came to be doing what you're doing right now.
And it is a bit of a background. So I was one of those stay-at-home mums with, at the time I had 2 children when I decided that we didn't have much money at the time, and I wanted to earn a little bit extra money and also still be at home with the kids. So we started breeding insects for the pet trade.
Yeah.
My husband, he's a herpetologist, so he keeps his own reptiles and lizards and creepy crawlies. And because he had so many, he started breeding his own insects to be able to feed them. And he always had this idea that we should start up our own little insect breeding business and sell it to the pet trade for a bit of extra income. And I kind of come up with the idea, well, why don't I do it while I'm at home with the kids? And, at the time we were bakers. We're actually qualified bakers, believe it or not.
Wow.
And he was working at the bakery, and I started breeding insects, feeding them during the day, and started selling them, to the pet trade. So not thinking it would take off, and it did take off very well. Yeah. I guess to give you a bit of an idea where we got to, we were probably selling around about $90,000 worth of insects per quarter to the pet trade. So it was a pretty good little business, I should
that's
say.
Incredible.
And and unfortunately when you start breeding insects, you get escapees. And that become a bit of a problem, especially we only lived on half an acre at the time, and obviously our neighbours around us, started complaining that they had the odd scorpion or the crickets coming into the house. So it wasn't that wasn't very good. No. So I had to call in a pest controller to obviously deal with that, and hubby wouldn't let me do that because he had his own little private collection, and he was worried that the chemicals were going to, of course, kill off his own collection. So we had a big infestation of wolf spiders, and basically they were coming in from the reserve that we lived beside, and they were coming in to get a feed, I guess, from all our escapee insects. And so when hubby went away on a camping trip with the boys, I got the pest controller in, not thinking that he would turn up home when the pest controller rocked up because he'd been rained out. And I guess to cut a long story short, he got talking to the pest controller, loved what he was talking about, and basically decided to get into the pest control industry.
Goodness.
So we basically went from, when the census come out and we had to write down what our occupation was, mine was I was breeding insects. My husband was killing insects. So I'm sure they thought we were taking the mickey, but
I bet they did.
So we kind of did both for a while.
Yep.
Until the insect breeding business, it got too much, way too much for me. I was trying to do it all on my own while he was out doing pest control, and we in the end sold the insect breeding business.
That's incredible. So a small hobby that was meant to be a side hustle, and we were talking a little bit about side hustles before we went live, has turned into this saleable business that not only helped funded your family's lifestyle, but it was a product or an entity that you could sell at the end of the day. That's absolutely mind-blowing. Even bigger than that, it's led on to this huge life change for both you and your husband.
A massive life change, and that business is still doing fantastic to this day. That was Mini Beast Enterprises, and we come up with the slogan, we breed them, you feed them, and they still use that slogan. And look, to take that off, it was hard because at the time the biggest company that was selling insects in Australia was Pisces, which they still are. And so what we did is I sent out free boxes to the biggest pet stores. Yep. And I then had my friends ring up and say, oh, those crickets that we bought, they were fantastic. When are you getting those back in again? And it kind of worked because they started ordering from us. And it just took off. It was a great business, but unfortunately when you're dealing with live insects or live animals, things go wrong. So we lost $120,000 worth of crickets just because the power went out once, and obviously turned off all the fans, and we had it all set up in shipping containers, and that's quite devastating when something like that happens.
So Nicky, running any kind of business is super challenging, but obviously running one with live animals, as you said, has its own set of challenges. Biggest challenge for me would probably be that infestation of wolf spiders. How on earth did you cope with that?
I didn't. That's why I rang the pest control. I didn't. And I'm not joking when I say the wolf spiders they were coming into my lounge room, and it was freaking me out. So, look, it's I guess the good thing that come out of the breeding insects, I'd never go back into it again. Yep. To be quite honest, the stress that was involved with dealing with the live insects. But it obviously set us up financially where we were able to, eventually start our own pest control business. So, my husband did work for another company for many years before we started our own. Yep. He also went into training and assessing pest control as well. So, so it definitely is a story coming from breeding insects to killing them. There's more money in killing them that there is in breeding, so that's good. Okay. And less stress.
I would think so. I am one of those people that happily parts with lots of money every year just to keep my home pest free. I'm not a fan. I can handle a lot of animals, but I can even spiders. Providing they don't jump at me, I'm not too bad. It's the ones that fly at me, crickets and. Well, crickets aren't too bad. They're a little slower, but grasshoppers and things, can't stand them.
There was nothing for me to go into a supermarket and then I'd have a cricket crawl out of my top or a cockroach fall off me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Incredible. So it's part of my life I don't miss.
Yeah, I bet it is.
I'll say that.
And do you still practice on the tools yourself within the business now, or is that part of what your team does with you?
Yeah, so obviously I'm not out in the field with pest control. So we're originally from Geelong, and when we decided to go out on our own, we didn't want to go out in Geelong. A couple of reasons. One of them being is Jay got on very well with his boss, and we classed them as very good friends. So we didn't want to go into competition with them. And second, Jay felt very uncomfortable. He had pretty much taught most of the Victorian pest technicians at Tafe, and he kind of felt that, we're sort of going into competition with all his students. So we decided if we're going to do it, we've got to move. And we were thinking of Darwin, and thank goodness we didn't choose Darwin, because I don't think I would have coped in Darwin. Hubby nearly convinced me Darwin was where we were going to move. And and then I came on a girls' trip up to the Sunshine Coast and fell in love with Noosa, and basically, we threw a dart at the board and said that's where we're going. And we literally just packed everything up and moved to Noosa. And
it's an incredible spot.
It is. It's I still feel like I'm on holidays here, even though we're working. And it was hard because at the time my youngest was 10 months old, and trying to start a business from scratch, it was very, very hard. And we were looking at buying an existing pest control business, but that fell through. They wanted us to move up before Christmas, and we weren't able to move until after Christmas. And they literally sold the business a day before Christmas, I think it was. And we sort of felt, well, you know what, if we're going to spend X amount on an existing business, why don't we spend that money and put it into our own business and our own reputation?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's pretty much what we did. And we started from scratch. So
other than running your business with the live insects, how much experience had you had at running a business prior to that? Like, there are a lot of lessons to learn, obviously, to creating a successful business. What was it like right in the very beginning, and what did the journey to where you're at now look like for you?
Yeah. After breeding insects, both hubby and I had said we'd never, ever go into business again. To be honest, it nearly caused divorce.
Yes.
I was exhausted. I had a breakdown. Hubby had to leave the pest control for a while to help me. It was very, very stressful. So we always said we will never, ever go into business again until we decided to start a pest control business, which I kind of pushed for. And I sort of sat back and thought, well, look, we now know what not to do.
Yeah, that's true.
I think most successful people I talk to in business, they've had a lot of failures, and I think you learn from that. And you take that on board, and that's what we definitely did. And so when we started the pest business, I think my focus was not to do what we did with the insects, and family was very important to us. And we worked around that, and we still do. Like, family is our first priority, and we do work around that. And I think starting from scratch was so much easier for me because we didn't have a large clientele when we first started.
Yes.
So I kind of, eased myself into it, and I was able to work around the baby to a point when, she was too noisy and I couldn't talk on the phone. I then had to put her into daycare.
Yeah.
But it was a lot easier because I gradually taught myself. I'd never been in an admin role. I'd never done anything like that. So I started networking. Networking was huge for me. I was a very shy person. And not knowing anyone in Noosa, I learnt very quick that Noosa is a cliquey town. It's not what you know, it's who you know in Noosa. And so I started networking, and I still remember my very first luncheon that I turned up to. I hated it. I walked in there and I seen all these ladies, and not one of them spoke to me. I felt very uncomfortable, and they all went around and did their little infomercial where you stand up with the microphone and talk about your business for 60 seconds. And I just passed the microphone to the next person. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I came home, and hubby had actually come home from work to allow me to attend this luncheon because we didn't have babysitters at the time. And he said, how did you go? And I said, awful. I said, I hated the women. I hated the luncheon. It was terrible. And he goes, oh, so you're not going back? And I said, yes, I'm going back. I said, I don't like the way they made me feel. I said, how dare they?
Yeah, it's good for you.
I ended up, I was seeing a kinesiologist at the time, and she actually said something to me that really, jolted me. And she sort of said, I notice you wear black all the time. I said, yeah. And she said, people normally wear black because they like to hide. And she said, I want you to do me a favour. I want you to wear something really bright when you walk into the next luncheon. And I said, oh, no, I can't do that. And she said, I just want you to trial this. And she said, and then I want you to go up and just shake someone's hand and just introduce yourself. And she said, because these people don't know you.
Yeah.
And people tend to talk to those who they know. And I did that. And it was amazing what a difference it made, to be quite honest. And I know myself now when I'm at a networking event, I find I tend to go to those people I know.
Yes.
And then I have to stop and realise and go, oh, there's a new person over there. I should really go over and introduce myself.
Fantastic.
So
tip.
I had to learn a lot
Yes.
when starting my own business and in a town that we knew no one.
Yeah.
So we had to market ourselves very well. We noticed when we first came into the town, there was a few other pest control businesses. They didn't stand out. Their websites weren't that great. Their vehicles were quite plain. So we spent a lot of money on marketing. So our vehicles, they were fully wrapped. We had, brand new websites done up, and we joined into everything. Christmas parades, we had mascots, we had ant mascots and bee mascots, and everything we could do, we just did, and we just made sure that everyone knew our presence was there, and it worked.
It's a steep learning curve, isn't it? Starting a business.
It is.
And doing so without, like, what we talk about all the time is you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep.
And so if you've never done it before, or you haven't been taught how to do it, because none of us are taught when we take on our trade or we put our hand up and say, yep, I'm going to jump in and help you out with the business. We're not taught how to be business owners. We don't know how to manage a business. We don't understand sales and marketing. We don't understand data systems and cash flow forecasts. None of that makes any sense to any of us, or very little of us, or how important that is for our business and how it helps facilitate that growth that we're looking for so that we can have the lifestyle that we would all like. So I think hearing that from someone who's clearly very successful, who has not only got one business but two, and has gone on to become the CEO of a national organisation that helps women connect around your industry, is incredible for people to understand. We all start at the start, and we all start right back where we don't know, and we have to be vulnerable enough to put our hand up and say, I don't know, can you help me? Hello, pleased to meet you. My name's Nicky. And that's super challenging for all of us. Even the most confident person in the room would find it quite difficult to walk into a room full of strangers and walk up and shake someone's hand and start a conversation. So to hear that from you is quite inspiring, understanding that we are all starting from the beginning. No matter what our journey looks like, we have to start at the start to get where we want to be in the end. It's just that determination that gets us over the line.
Exactly. And look, one of the things I think even starting your own business is doing your homework, really doing your homework. And one of the things that I still remember doing is we looked at many businesses that were for sale, pest control businesses along the whole coast and even in the Gold Coast, to be quite honest. And obviously when you're looking at their books, because that's what you look at when you're buying a business, I looked at the profit margins and I thought, why are these businesses, why are their profit margins so much higher than some of the other ones that I'm looking at? And it was really simple. It stood out really easy, and that was the ones that with the higher profit margin I noticed were only working in a certain area, in a smaller area. And that's one of the things that we focused on with ours is we are only Noosa based. We don't do the entire Sunshine Coast. And a lot of people really struggled, couldn't understand why we wouldn't travel 30 minutes down the road to do, a termite barrier. And it's something that we're really stuck to, which is hard when you're first starting a business because you want to take as much money as you possibly can. But we stuck to our guns and we service the Noosa area, and that's, we literally do a 10-kilometre radius. So,
finding that niche for your business is so important, and it does feel really limiting, like you've just explained. In the first place, in the first instance, it feels like, I'm going to miss out. I'm not being available. And yet it's where the power comes in your business to create that freedom that you're looking for, rather than being run ragged. Like, there is no profit margin in traveling consistently for work. There just isn't. You're going to lose it in your travel time, or you're going to lose it in your fuel, or the lack of productivity because the team's exhausted from being in the car all day, every day. And instead, finding that niche, that area, or the style of work that you do, that's where the power comes from, and the leverage then for you and your business. So it's incredible to think that you were able to pick up on that lesson so early on, and then, I guess, back each other to make that decision and pull it over the line. It sounds like you and your husband, it's Jay, isn't it, have a great working relationship. Was it always that way?
Yeah, no, we do. We actually work better together as a team than separate.
Yep.
And look, we have our disagreements like most married couples, and we don't always agree on something, but we do work really well together. And one of the things that we said when we first started the business was, his area is out in the field, out working out in the field. I'm in the office, and don't tread on my toes when you're in my office. And I won't tread on yours. I won't tell you how to do your job when you're out in the field. And we've kind of always stuck to that. Every now and then we have to remind each other.
Yes.
And but look, we do really struggle when when one of us is down. And I think to give an example is in 2017 we had just won Pest Manager of the Year, which was huge for us. And 2 weeks after that, my husband, he was diagnosed with advanced stages of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, follicular lymphoma. And to be honest, he probably shouldn't even be here.
Yeah.
And that threw a sixer to us. And it was then that I realised that, oh gosh, we really worked together as a team, and I had to really take over the business and make sure everything was running correctly, and also, be looking after him and taking him to his chemo sessions. And that was really tough times, but we do work so much better as a team. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful is, I look at him and I'm still in awe with everything that he knows, to be honest. I just think that, he's, he's amazing. And, he's always learning something, learning something new, and always helping other people in the industry, giving up his free time. And I think that's really important.
I agree.
With what we're doing
to give back, isn't it? And I think advancing our careers to a point in which we have the time and the availability to give back is just fantastic. And I feel like it's something that should be on the radar for everybody. And it's not. I understand that we all have different journeys, for sure. Probably leads us quite well into what you're doing as the CEO and president of the Professional Women in Australian Pest Management. I really wanted to say that twice because now I've nailed it twice. I find that fascinating. So I've worked quite a bit with some various industry organisations. I've spent a lot of time working with HIA in various capacities. There are some other female-orientated organisations in and around Brisbane that I've spent a bit of time working with as well. It's hard. It's not easy to do. So I'm in awe that you are doing this in your field of pest management. I'd love to understand your journey within that. That alone is an entire career path, let alone everything else that you're doing as well.
Yeah, once again, I didn't think that was going to take off, and it did, and
Absolutely.
has created lots more work. But it's something that I love to do. And look, this is going back, I guess, to my time when hubby got sick. I realised then I didn't have the family around me to have that support, because we don't have any family in Noosa, and I didn't have the support in the industry. There was sort of no one that I could really turn to and say, hey, I need some help. I don't know what I'm doing here. I know what I'm doing in the office, but trying to deal with the technicians out on the road as well.
Yes.
So I struggled a lot because I felt so alone and I had no one to turn to. And it really kind of affected me a lot. And when hubby went into remission and we actually went overseas, we went to Orlando, Florida to go to Pest World, which is a big conference over in the US. And we attended that conference, I think it was 2018, and I connected with a few females over there, and they invited me to, it's the PWIPM, so it's Professional Women in Pest Management over there, another tongue twister. They invited me to their big networking breakfast, and I attended, and I knew no one, and I sat there, and I think there was 120 women in that room. And I sort of sat there and thought, why don't we have this back here in Australia? I don't understand. Like, this is a great networking group of women all in the same industry. They've all got something in common, and they were announcing some awards, and it was just really fantastic to see. And I was talking to another woman from Australia at the time, or actually at a piano bar, and we'd had a bit too much to drink, to be quite honest. And she had said to me, why don't we start, our own association? And I said, that's a great idea. I thought, don't ever ask me to do anything when I've had a drink, because I'll always say yes. And pretty much that's how it started. We came back, and I'm a person that if I'm going to do anything, I'll have to do it at 100%. Otherwise, I can't do it. It's just not in me. Any business that we've started, when we had the bakery, when we did the insect breeding business, to Laguna Pest Control, I'll always put 100% into it. So basically, yeah, that's how it started. I started off with a Facebook group and just connected with other women, and I received many calls from manufacturers and distributors in the industry just asking, how can we help? How can we kickstart this off? And that's pretty much where it went from. And then obviously we registered it, and it's now moved on to a company where we've got 9 directors, and it's going really, really well. And I think, for women in our industry, it was hard because we really weren't connecting. We weren't connecting, and it's not that men weren't supporting us. It's just that we weren't connecting as women. And when I first started, it wasn't perceived that well, to be quite honest. We did get a bit of backlash when it first come out. We had a few sort of say, oh, why are you segregating from the men? Why do you need to have your own little group? And, we were slammed quite a bit at the start. But now we really do have the support from everyone in the industry, and most of our supporters are men. So, and it's really great to see.
Yeah, totally. I think we all face our own set of, I guess, complications around being in business. And I think even from my own experience, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, it can be very challenging. There are unique challenges that I face on a day-to-day basis, less so now as I'm more established in my career. And I feel that we do need others like us to connect. So in our case, that means women. The men connect quite well. They have, I think it's probably a little more diverse now, but prior to maybe 5 years ago, there were a lot of industry, maybe not conferences, but training days, etc., where they would catch up with other tradies and they chat and they have the opportunity to connect in those situations where us in the office or us support in a supporting role or even as a business owner, we didn't necessarily have access to that. So having an opportunity to connect where we can share where we're at, ask for help, get some support is so incredibly important for us, no matter where we fit in the business, so that we can then help develop better businesses as we move on. I think it's always challenging and it's a difficult road to travel, bridging either side of the gap, I suppose. And I still feel like it's essential that we're all able to connect in our own way, in our own time. So I'm pleased to hear that you finally found support there. Yep. You guys actually have a conference every year. Did I read that correctly?
We had our first conference last year. So, and that was another idea that I thought, why have I got myself into this? So, we created a leadership conference. Great. And basically it was a national conference, and we got women from all over Australia attend the conference. And it was very challenging times too, because at the time most of the states were in lockdown with COVID, and we had a lot of people saying, what are you doing trying to run a conference? And so we we set it up so it was in the Gold Coast. So I sort of figured that, look, if if the borders don't open, we will probably still have enough delegates to run the conference just in Queensland alone. So we had Queensland keynote speakers and guest speakers. And luckily the borders opened 2 days before the conference, and it went ahead. I don't know how, but it just did. So so that was our very first conference. Unfortunately, this one was all set to go in March, but we have actually cancelled that one due to, obviously, with the COVID numbers at the moment. It's a little bit different to what we were going through last year. And so next year it's all booked again for next year, and it was good because we've sort of created that networking group that I guess women felt safe to talk.
Yes, totally.
And it's one thing to do, our sessions on Zoom, but you can't replace face-to-face networking. It's just not the same. And I've never seen anything like it, to be honest. Even with the National Pest Conference that is normally run every year, women weren't connecting. We were not connecting at that conference because the men were there. So you tend to hide behind, the men and not create those conversations, where with this, it was just women. It was all women. And we had women from all different businesses. Like we had people from Rent-A-Kill, people from Gins, Pest Control, people from Flick. We had small businesses, large businesses, your hubby and wife team type businesses, and they will bring in their administration team. There was a real different range of people and businesses there, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What a great experience.
So looking forward to next year. We're a bit devastated we can't run it this year, but look, we don't want to be known as the association that spread COVID through the pest industry. It's not going to be a good look.
No, it's not. Nicky, I always like to understand, is there one particular business lesson that you wish other business owners understood? I think, again, as women, we have the propensity to share in a way that maybe men don't. And I think it's a great opportunity for many of us to learn from one another around, because we all have different experiences, of course. So what sort of lessons did you learn along the way that you think would be beneficial for other business owners?
To be honest, for me is take risks. But it's a lot of people don't want to take the risk, and I've never been a risk taker, and I am now. I think really believe in yourself and take that risk. And I once again, I don't know many successful businesses who haven't taken a risk. It doesn't just fall into your lap. It is hard work and putting in that 100% and taking those risks. For me, entering in awards, it wasn't about being the best business. For me, it was understanding what I need to implement in the business to be good enough to win the awards. And that was a big lesson for me when entering. That the very first year that we entered, I remember my husband, he thought we had it in the bag because he knows everything. Well, he doesn't know everything, but he knows a lot. Yeah. And, and even he thought, oh, we've got this in the bag. And then we sort of, walked away with that tail between our legs and realised that, the systems that we had in place for our business weren't that great. Yeah. And with entering an award, you learn really quickly that you don't have certain things in your business that you should have. And we implemented a lot and worked very, very hard to make sure we had everything in place. So when we were submitting the awards, it was making our business better.
Yeah, definitely.
It was making it better. So I think take risks, always take risks, and don't play it safe. You won't get very far.
No, it's just about being a bit brave, isn't it? And you can take measured and calculated risk, of course, but being brave enough to make a choice. I think sometimes we become polarized by the opportunity to make a choice and we don't end up making a choice. We get stuck. and it doesn't get us where we really want to go. So working towards making risk, I think, is a fantastic tip, Nicky. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This has been fascinating. I still can't quite get over the breeding the crickets.
That's another story in itself, to be quite honest.
It's a whole podcast on its own. It's absolutely fascinating. And how a side hustle went to a saleable business to such a large extreme is just, it's incredible. It's a real credit to you. Where can our listeners find you, Nicky? Where do they go to find you and find out more about the association?
Literally just, you can either type in PWAPM or Women in Pest Management and it will come up. So Professional Women in Australian Pest Management, it'll come up.
Excellent. So I'll make sure all of that's included in the show notes so that our listeners know where to find you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting to hear from you. Lots of lessons along the way, some absolute nuggets there. The networking tip was my favourite. When I preface this episode, people aren't going to be able to make that connection at all, which is great because it means they now need to listen. So thank you very much for being here and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Ladies in Business. Got a guest you'd like us to interview? Maybe you have a story to share or some feedback to give. Find us on socials or drop us a message via the Tradies in Business website. Take care of yourself, ladies.